That's a good one. That is a good victory right there. That is, man, just you walked into it. People like to talk about trap game. Bad team, good team takes care of the bad team, and that's what needed to be done. Talking Knicks Wizards in this episode 5. Oh no, I keep saying 5. Episode 604. We are getting to it. Knicks Wizards, let's go. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. You are listening to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, MMA on occasion. Let's get to it.
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
The Yankees are champions of baseball. Shaking and baking right here on the neophyte.
Trying to close the show.
She was doing a great job of feeding.
That is
It's over. Don't you regret not coming to the Knicks? Don't you regret not coming to the Knicks? Game over. World Series over. Yankees win. The Yankees win.
All right, let's go. Cue what has probably been overused already, January 6th, Knicks Storm Capital One Arena comments. Welcome to the show, everyone. Episode 604 of the podcast. It turns out the Knicks just like doing the thing that they did last year, where they just decide not to lose games after making a trade. In very Josh Hart fashion, they're doing the same thing with OG Anunoby right now. 4 games in a row have been won by the Knicks. 4-0 in the new year. They're playing their best basketball of the season right now, in my opinion. And last night was no different with a 121-105 win over the terrible Washington Wizards. The first half of this game, everything was clicking for the Knicks. Every Knick except for one shot over 50% from the field. And they were up 63-43 at halftime. Looked like it was going to be a very easy, the reserves can play the entire second half type of win. But one, Tom Thibodeau's on this team. He's the head coach, so that doesn't happen. And he runs the starters out there the entire third quarter. And you could see the Knicks clearly had tired legs. Washington, they play a lot of up-tempo ball. They were running in transition. The Knicks were a bit fatigued. So they made their run in that third quarter. The only sub you had in the period, the only one at all, was Hart coming in for OG midway through. But the Knicks were able to pull away in the fourth quarter behind a very key sequence or sequences. There's about 5 minutes and change remaining in the game. Josh Hart, somebody misses a shot, but Josh Hart grabs a very tough offensive rebound, kicks it out to Brunson, who's wide open for 3. Brunson sets his feet, takes his time, knocks it down. The very next possession, yet another signature block from Isaiah Hartenstein, which seems to be a thing now. He blocks Kuzma. That leads to Randle having an and-one take to the basket in transition. Got to tell you, Isaiah Hartenstein's blocks are reminding me more and more of the Nerlens Noel blocks during the We Here season, where it just led to a lot of transition baskets, and they always came at key points in the game. Very similar in that sense. A few minutes later, you had another very tough finish from Randle, and then the next possession after that, you had the OG Anunoby putback slam. So that was all together, and that helped the Knicks ice the game at the moment with a 21-point lead, and they eventually win 121-105 over the Wizards last night. And I'm going to keep hammering this topic because I'll do it until I can't. It's a new look defense, man. and specifically these lineups where you have a trio of wings who are just extremely versatile on the defensive end just produce such elite defensive results. Like the Quentin Grimes, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby wing trio, elite defense. I mean, there is a perfect example of their phenomenal synergy and team defense in the middle of the second quarter. They had a stand where Josh Hart and Precious Achua deny a pick and roll. And then that rookie, I don't even want to try to pronounce his name, passes it to the wing. But Hart and Grimes do a great job rotating over to contest. Then it's passed off again mid-shot back to the initial ball handler, the rookie, who relocates. But Grimes seals off the baseline to deter the drive, and then he forces the pass to the corner. In the corner, you have OG Anunoby smother in the corner, deflects the ball out of bounds, and the Wizards have to reset. So this was a sequence during the middle of the second quarter where I just watched them play phenomenal defense like that, and I'm just like in awe. I'm really in awe. And I know I'm repeating myself nonstop, but like with OG Anunoby here now, everybody's got established roles. They can go back to where they're most comfortable. OG Anunoby he now guards the point of attack. He's guarding the best perimeter scorers, which means it doesn't have to be Dante, who's much better in help and in rotation. He's back to his off-ball role. It doesn't have to be RJ Barrett, who was way too small to guard 1-5 like OG can, and RJ wasn't the greatest defending off the dribble anyway. Hart and Grimes, they can now go back to defending the second best perimeter scorers, which is far more fit for them. Hart's allowed to be more physical with those guys, versus having to constantly be assigned to power forwards. And it's just less pressure for someone like Quentin Grimes, who's still trying to find his offense. And maybe that's what's helping him lately find his offense, is that he doesn't have to take on that number one defensive role of guarding the opposing best player. Even Julius Randle has seen an uptick on that end recently, right? Maybe it's just one of those random spurts where he decides to lock in on that end. Maybe it's OG, right? Maybe he's affecting Randle and he's playing more motivated, but he's got less of a role defensively now. Isaiah Hartenstein on the back line, he's got less pressure, right? Even his point of attack defense has seen an improvement. But of course he's blocking shots. The defensive rebounding has been unbelievable with him. 19 rebounds last night. The hustle, the toughness, just the way he's able to grab those two-handed rebounds last night. You got 3-4 Wizards around the basket. He's coming up with it. He's not getting enough respect. You look around, not that I pay attention to national media, but, Stephen A. trying to play his character, calling him some dude. And then I was listening to a podcast this morning, a Knicks podcast, and he was saying how he was watching the game through the Wizards telecast, and one of their play-by-play guys was like, with Mitchell Robinson down, who's going to be the rim protector now? And it's like, well, if you watch this team the slightest bit, you know who that is. And Isaiah Hartenstein has been unbelievable, a savior for this Knicks team, really a savior. As a reserve this season, across 26 games, Hart averaged 6 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist with 2 stocks per game. As a starter this season, Hart across 10 games, 8 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists with 3 stocks a game. So, sometimes more volume doesn't always mean the same effectiveness. It's not the case with Hart. The guy has been incredible. Tonight, or last night, 8 points, 19 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 steals, 2 blocks. He's been unbelievable for them. And he's developed into such a fantastic rim protector for the Knicks, which that wasn't, if you remember back to when they got him from LA, that wasn't always in his arsenal. When the Knicks signed Isaiah Hartenstein, they knew that he was an offensive big. Like, he was more about the floater, and then maybe he'd shoot an occasional 3. I think they were hoping. But we'll talk more about his offense in 2 seconds and what he brings on that end, but like the defense has stood out from him. And you put it all together, and yeah, you're getting 100 points allowed, 92 points allowed, 100. You're getting performances like this from the defense. Now, I'm not saying the Knicks are going to remain this incredible on the defensive end, but like, can they get back to being top 10? I think that's reasonable. I think that's very reasonable. They were top 3 earlier in the year. Again, I'm not sure they're going to go there. Top 10? I mean, they're already on their way. They went from 19th to currently 14th since the trade. So during that 4-game span right now that we're on, they're playing they have the number 2 defensive basketball across that span. So I think it's going to get back into the top 10. I feel like that's the goal. And to have a Knicks team, if they can get there, that is both top 10 in offense and defense, I mean, that would be very comforting for a lot of us, and it would instill a ton of confidence. And I think that's what we potentially have here. So things feel good. On the defensive end, I just wanted to point that out right away, how great they've been playing defense. And again, you get one guy, and it can change so much, right? We saw when Mitch went down, it took a while for guys to adjust. OG comes in here, and it's like everyone's gluing again. Now, granted, 3 out of the 4 offenses we played have not been great offenses. But, again, I think there's reason to believe they could be a top 10 defense again. OG Anunoby, having him and his length and his switch ability and his off-ball instincts at the wing every night, it's a very massive difference. And I think we're going to see this. And then you go to the other end, and it's like the offense kind of has a new look to it too. Replacing RJ Barrett with OG Anunoby, now you have somebody who can actually space out the floor. OG's floor spacing in the corners, and he's able to shoot. So the defense has to respect that. That's going to drag the defense out of the paint for Brunson and Randle to operate, right? When you had RJ out there, he's clogging the paint, right? He's clogging the paint constantly. OG Anunoby, even when he's deep into the paint, he passes the ball. He's not just going to, as where RJ would just challenge rim protectors or he turn it over. OG Anunoby's willing to pass the ball. When he's in the paint, he's also, if he's not going to pass it, he's able to elevate over the defense and throw it down off 2 feet. How many times have we seen these 2-footed dunks versus RJ Barrett consistently playing below the rim and throwing up those contested floaters, right? How about Isaiah Hartenstein offensively versus Mitchell Robinson? Hart's stretching the floor in the half court. The defense can't sag off of Isaiah Hartenstein like they do Mitch when he's away from the basket, because he's always a threat to pass the ball. He's a threat to screen, DHO, turn DHO into pick and roll. I mean, we're seeing Tibbs is going 5 out a lot more with Hart at starting center. I mean, how many times have we seen that with Mitch? You don't. You go 5 out like that, and you have Hart as a playmaking hub in the high post. He's finding cutters, Dante. He's hitting up OG Anunoby. Randle's receiving the ball while he's going downhill. He found Randle on the low post last night. And this is not a knock on Mitch, but different play styles net you different offensive results. With Mitch, he's constantly in the dunker spot because he's eating offensive rebounds, and you love that. But because he doesn't have the offensive upside, the paint's going to be clogged all day with him down there in the restricted area. That's not the case with Isaiah Hartenstein. You're seeing Hart bring movement, too. Off the ball, he brings movement. We've discussed this before. Constant motion off the ball. Now, I'm not talking about sprinting on a cut either. That's not what Hart does. But even just simple relocation. Last night, there was an excellent example of what I'm talking about here. It was for his first basket of the game, actually. OG Anunoby drives baseline. Hart clears the restricted area, and he shifts to the middle of the paint. So OG dumps it up to him. Hart now has a wide open floater because his man was so focused on stopping penetration. Simple relocation like that because Hart has the floater in his bag. It's the floor spacing he brings from having a floater in his bag. It's a weapon. Mitchell Robinson, he's never in the mid-range like that creating offense because he didn't have an arsenal. So to throw in this into the mix on top of having OG, it's great, man. And the Knicks, you thought that like losing RJ Barrett, losing Emmanuel quickly would hurt a little bit in transition. You have Dante who runs the break. Josh Hart's going to always run the break. Randle's making an effort now to play a little quicker and to throw in the fact that Hart, the only big on the roster who can make those outlet passes, right? He's able to throw those outlets in transition. That really helps the Knicks get out and run. He found Brunson last night. He's finding guys constantly this way. So the offense looks great. Quentin Grimes is starting to look a little better in this new look. You know, there's a noticeable difference in the way Grimes looks, the activity, diving for loose balls and catching and shooting right away last night on the offensive side. And you know, the versatility and how Grimes is being used is pretty noticeable, especially if you go back to that Philadelphia 76ers game. The way he was shooting the ball, it was a lot of transition looks, right? It's always good to get one of your best three-point shooters open looks when the defense isn't set. He had a couple finger roll finishes on the break against Philly. He had another look where he faked to the corner and he pulled up for a three-pointer in transition. A lot of off the dribble stuff, right? He came off pick and pop, off those guard screens where he's able to fade to the perimeter, knocking down three-pointers off DHO with Hart. So if the Knicks can keep this version of Grimes unlocked, then my gosh, with his defense in those wing-heavy lineups, I mean, you talk about 3-and-D, my Christ, like, it's really special. And, you know, this is just off the top of my head here. I don't have this part on my notes, but, like, I was watching the game last night, and I don't know if there are metrics that back this up. Maybe it's on cleaning the glass somewhere. But I feel like with the improved spacing, ball movement, and the continuous success from three-point land, I feel like the Knicks are doing a much better job executing against the zone. When defense is going to zone, and Washington was in zone last night at parts of the game, the Knicks were doing a pretty nice job of busting it, especially when you consider what they did in the second and fourth quarters. You could just see, you know, when Randle was off ball, he was cutting backdoor from the baseline. They were using him to get downhill and bust through it. There was just a lot of moving around, and I feel like that helped them beat the zone. So the offense looks very good. Now, there's one thing regarding the Knick half-court offense that I don't want to say it's getting loud, but it's making some noise, you know, on Twitter, social media recently. And that's regarding OG Anunoby. And we're going to talk about that when we return from our first break here on episode 604 of BD4. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We appreciate you sticking around and listening so far. When you have a chance, be sure to open YouTube to subscribe, like, and comment. And if you're already watching on YouTube, be sure to head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. We appreciate your feedback and are always looking to improve. Now, with that all said, let's get you back to the show.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. The Giants just kicked the shit out of the Eagles. That's pretty cool. Sorry. That's pretty awesome. I don't know what that means for Philly. I think they're dropping the seedings. Knicks talk. I wanted to just briefly go over like the half-court offense. We just praised a lot of it. It looks so much better. There's been a little bit of talk now coming from Knicks fans on if like should OG Anunoby be doing more / should he have more of a role in half-court offense? Me personally, like, I think Knicks fans and OG himself, because he did complain about his role with Toronto, But I think Knicks fans should probably prepare for OG to not be very high usage offensively. He plays with Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. Those are two high usage ISO guys. And we've had this discussion before, right? We've had this discussion about Quentin Grimes and even Mitchell Robinson before too, about the pecking order. Now, Tibbs has run some actions, not around, but featuring OG. The Knicks are setting some pin downs with him in the corners, and Hart, like I said, has hit him on some cuts. But he's not an offensive weapon. Like, OG Anunoby's not a scorer. He's not a creator. He's not somebody who's going to give you a ton of offense. His offense comes by spacing out in the corners. That's Tom Thibodeau's system. It's that Grimes role where when Grimes was with the first unit, he provided spacing by dragging the defense out. It's to drag the defense out so Randle and Brunson can operate, score at the basket, occasionally kick out. Now, I hope it's not to the extent that Grimes was ignored, and I don't think it won't, because I think the Knicks realize OG is an established player who can score. But like, I would prepare for him to be lower usage here. Otherwise, you're going to have like another Tibbs qualm if you're a Tibbs hater. For OG to have a little usage on this team than he did with Toronto, I would prepare. The last few seasons with Toronto, he was giving them 15 to 17 points per game. I think, with a little bit less usage here, since the Knicks have more scoring personnel outside of him, I would expect that number to probably be more 12 to 15 points per game now. Especially considering the Knicks are still going after what could be another high usage guard to help Brunson out, right? Even if that guard does run with the bench. So there have been some times like early in the fourth quarter against Philly, I think, and then last night in the second quarter, OG was out there with the second unit. So maybe that's your window right there to get him in the offense. Run him in those pistol sets you had RJ Barrett in, or with OG showing an ability to cut and throw down a dunk, maybe you get him running those 45 cuts, right? You get the weak side reacting where the help side defender either has to commit early to the cut or abandon, which opens up the strong side lane. Maybe getting back screening right in those little Spain pick and roll actions. Maybe that's your window when he's with the bench units. But I also think at the same time, he can be a little more aggressive because he's very good at attacking closeouts. That's a strength of his. So far, as a Knick, we're seeing some overpassing from him. There is overpassing. And we also have to remember that he's still trying to learn the playbook. Although, I can have a conversation there about, is he really trying to learn the playbook? We all know that whole thing. But, I'm just saying, I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't expect him to be featured on offense. He's going to be featured on defense. That's exactly why the Knicks got him. That's why they're winning right now. His defense has changed things. So I'm not sweating OG Anunoby not really scoring a bunch of points since coming over, because I didn't get him thinking that they were getting a scorer. I got him. When the Knicks got him, I was expecting him to do exactly what we needed, and that's provide defense at the wing. So an actual problem that I think we should probably discuss is the bench unit. So we're going to talk about the bench a little bit when we return from our second break here on BD4, episode 604. Stay with us here on the show.
You can also find us on social media. If you'd like, you can follow BD4 on Facebook, and we're at BD4Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. We appreciate you helping us grow more and more every day. Let's get back to it.
All right, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. Yeah, the bench concerns aren't going away. It's been better lately. First off, I should say that. Shout out to Deuce McBride, because the second unit has been good, and Deuce McBride has actually been pretty good the last couple of games. He had a big game, obviously, against the Sixers, knocked down 4 straight threes in the first quarter. But then last night, he had a nice game. 5 points, 1 of 2 from 3, 5 assists, no turnovers, a steal, 13 minutes. He looked fine. He threw down a beautiful putback slam that I think surprised a lot of us, flashing some athleticism in the first quarter. And in the last 2 nights, he's 5 out of 7 on his threes. He's got 9 assists. So I actually like what I'm seeing from him lately. He's running. He ran a little bit of pick and roll, pick and pop last night, right? You've seen the difference when the Knicks run pick and roll with their first unit with Brunson. It's all about matchup hunting and getting switches for Brunson. But with Deuce McBride, since he doesn't have the same skill set, it's more of a traditional pick and roll where Hart or Precious, they'll hold good hard screens, then they'll roll, and then Deuce would get downhill and hit the kick out options in what was last night, Grimes and Josh Hart. So that was good to see last night, running a little pick and roll. Overall, though, like I'm still not very comfortable going to Deuce McBride as the backup point guard the rest of the season. I feel like Deuce, although his frame might not say it, is more of an off-ball wing, if anything. You know, he's going to defend the point of attack, but he doesn't have the offensive upside, the ball handling, and the footwork that you want from a point guard. So, like, the defense has seen a huge uptick in the Knicks, but they're still just the bench. It's so reliant right now on Brunson and Randle to score 30. And I'm just like, what happens when they don't score 30? You know, are the Knicks going to be able to make it through a playoff series that way? Are they going to be able to make it through the rest of the season that way? So it's a little scary to me. You know, is Hart going to be able to play 40 minutes every night? Because backup big's another question. Precious Achiuwa, like I like the kid. I love that he's New York native, but like he's obviously not on Tom Thibodeau's list. Like you could already tell he's not a Tibbs guy the way he's being used. He's not bound to stick around. He got 8 minutes last night. Didn't play in the second half really. Hart got 39 minutes. This was against a Wizards team who suck, first of all, and they don't have a legitimate big. We even saw Randle at small ball 5 when Hart went to the bench in this game. So I don't feel like Tibbs is utilizing him or has plans to. I think he's not long for this team, and I think the Knicks are going to make moves. And I think they're going to need to make these moves, and I think they will. I think they will. You know, I don't think this is sustainable. Like last night, you saw it once again. OG Anunoby, 31 minutes. Josh Hart, 32 minutes. Jalen Brunson, 35 minutes. Julius Randle, 38 minutes. And again, Hart, 39 minutes. The starters were ran heavy once again. It's another night where Brunson and Randle have to score 30. And you didn't see them both dropping 30 together pre-trade. You know? Now, the Knicks have, call it 7 legitimate rotational players, right? But those last 2 spots are very important. So, in terms of making this next trade, ideally you would like for the Knicks to get those next 2 guys, assuming it's going to be point guard center, without swapping out any of those 7 rotational guys, right? And by any of those 7 guys, I mean without giving up Grimes, because it's pretty obvious that Brunson, Randle, OG, Hart, Dante, Hart are all pretty safe for different reasons. But if they can get their big man off the scrap heap, fine, whatever. They got the DPE money. And then if they can find, if they have Fournier's salary to work with, they've got non-rotational assets, and they've got draft picks. So I still feel like it's very necessary to use all those assets and all that draft capital to go after a Malcolm Brogdon or a Tyus Jones, who are now probably at the top of my list. Brogdon, since he isn't expiring, and therefore he can be used in the summer to flip for, Donovan Mitchell or, whoever the next big guy is. The thing with Malcolm Brogdon is he's not always available. The injury thing scares the hell out of me, which is why I don't hate a guy we saw last night going after a Tyus Jones. Even though Tyus Jones is expiring, he fits to a T as a pick-and-roll point guard who hits the corners, right? Good pick-and-roll ball handler, and he's a very good driving kick point guard. But most importantly, with Tyus Jones, he wouldn't really cost you many assets. Not at all. Since he's expiring, probably some second-round picks in there. I think he would probably fit perfectly into those quickly minutes, 24, 25 minutes. So I think it needs to happen. It needs to happen, and I think it's going to happen. But the Knicks cannot rely on Brunson and Randle to just drop 30 every night and play 40 minutes. Like, that's not a sustainable formula. Randle was great, though, and we're going to talk about Julius right now because I'm handing him the game ball from last night's game.
Bing bang.
Julius Randle last night, 39 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. He was awesome. It was a nice bounce back to go from 8 points to 39 points from Friday to Saturday. Just killing the Washington Wizards last night, killing the zone defense, killing mismatches like Denny Adavia, who after the game had a weird comment saying how Randle wasn't tough to guard. I have it here. See if I can find it. For me, he's not that tough to guard. But probably he's aggressive. He picks his spots, and he's trying to score, honestly, like he's a big guy going into the lane, getting fouls. That's about it. Again, I'll remind you, Randle last night, 39 points on 57%. He shot 13 of 23, 3 of 8 from 3, 10 of 13 on free throws, and he had 5 assists. So he's absolutely tough to cover. Especially in this positionless nature of the modern NBA, where not many bigs match up with his size and physicality anymore at the power forward center position. Outside of Giannis, Embiid, Joker, I can't name another big who's tougher to guard in basketball. Especially when you get Randle going downhill like he's been the last few weeks. You get his momentum going up against a mismatch or a guy who's playing in a drop coverage. It's impossible to stop. And he was doing it all last night. He was cutting, posting, scoring in transition, off leakouts, putbacks. He's playing excellent ball. And if you care for the all-star stuff, I can see why you believe he should be on the team as well as Brunson. He seems to be playing with a lot more pizzazz on both ends of the floor recently too. Second leaps, dunks in the open court, but the defense is impressing the hell out of me in these last couple of games. The hustle plays he's making, diving out of bounds, a lot quicker on his closeouts, challenging shots. He's playing the pass lanes. Again, is it the OG Anunoby effect? Is he more motivated? Maybe. I tend to think it's just one of those random stretches where he decides to engage on that end of the floor. But I'm loving it right now. And if he even goes back to being that below average defender that he is, takes some plays off, you got to learn to live with it, given the consistent productivity that we're getting from Julius, right? My qualms with Julius is no longer in the regular season, but that's a subject for another day, possibly a day in April or May. But for now, I'm good because I know he's going to put up numbers and help you win games. And he's now second on the team in game balls with 10 behind Brunson, who's got 13. So good for Julius. He's playing his ass off right now. Awesome to see. We'll be right back.
If you have time in the day or maybe just prefer old-fashioned reading over listening, then you can always follow along and subscribe to BD4 Blog by going to BD4blog.com. We're not on there as often, but when we do post, it's just as entertaining, opinionated, and passionate as we are on this podcast. Thank you so much. And let's keep on with the show.
Bing bang.
That's right. Josh Hart is getting the second game ball from off the bench. 9 points last night for Hart, 4 rebounds and assists, 38% from the field. He was 3 for 8, 1 of 4 from 3, knocked down 100% of his free throws. He was good. It was another positive night in the box score for Josh Hart. That's been his whole thing since coming to the Knicks. He's been a net positive consistently. The Knicks are in the lead when he's on the floor. And he's it's not an empty stat. That's like legitimate. He continues to give the Knicks that pace, and that was an important part of last night to be able to match the Wizards' high-tempo style of offense. Hart was grabbing rebounds. He was pushing the ball up the floor. He only had 4 rebounds last night, but again, just he's so tough down there grabbing boards, and I think now that he's going to be sliding down, playing up to 2 and 3 more, that's going to help. And again, he was part of one of those key plays in the fourth quarter where he goes and grabs that offensive rebound, kicks it to Brunson, who knocks down that 3 voice crack. But yeah, he's been the perfect intangibles guy. Now, I still have my issues with Josh Hart in the half court and him in certain lineups with the spacing I don't love. I think Tibbs leans into the Josh Hart minutes a little too much a lot of the time. I think it cuts into DiVincenzo and Grimes' minutes when maybe we can get a little more creative in those fourth quarter lineups and get more from elsewhere. But that's also a conversation for another day. I want to praise Josh Hart for the way he's been playing. So Josh Hart, another big game from him. And the Knicks continue to win games, man. So, listen, I'm not gonna waste too much time. I think we discussed on everything we needed. I think we discussed everything we needed to. The Knicks are 4-0. The Knicks are 4-0 in a month where I asked going into January if they could go 11-5 at worst. So they're 4-0 right now. That means 7-5 the rest of the way would accomplish that goal, right? Looking pretty good. They're also 14-1 on the season against losing teams, so they're getting the damn job done. That's what you have to do. Take care of those teams and then, play well against elite competition, and you're going to find yourself in a good position heading into the playoffs. Overall, the Knicks are currently 21-15, which puts them at number 4 in the East. So they're 4th in the East after that Indiana loss. That's awesome. 3 back in the loss column for 3rd place on Philly. That's pretty cool. Not looking at that yet, but keep that in the back of your mind. But yeah, it's nice. Was I wrong? Maybe I was a little too harsh. Was I calling them mediocre? There's a lot of ball to play, but maybe I should have a higher expectation. It's funny whenever I do say stuff like that because I feel like I'm being wishy-washy, but it's like at the same time, if I wasn't to admit when I say pessimistic shit, then people would start calling me stubborn and they get mad that I'm not giving them the respect and admitting it. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword. It's a lose-lose situation sometimes. But I will say that I am impressed. I'm still high off the Philadelphia win, if I'm being honest, and I'll go as far as to say, not that I'm in any kind of rush, because I'm not, but I'm curious now, just curious to see what this version of the Knicks look like, with OG here, with Hart starting, RJ and Quigley gone, what they look like against the Boston Celtics now. Fortunately, the Knicks don't see them until late February, which will also, by that time, be, hopefully, after they make their next deal for backcourt help and maybe frontcourt help too, presumably. So, maybe both sides look different by then. But, I'm curious. I think, I don't want to jump ahead, but I have a feeling they could play them a lot better than they've been now. But we'll see. With that said, we're going to wrap this thing up as soon as we get back from our final break here on BD4, episode 604 of the podcast. And we'll wrap it up with our trivia, and then that'll be that. Stay with us. Be right back. Studio 69 Productions is a podcast production agency created by Leo Rodriguez to allow content creators to market their podcast. It's an online platform that will market your podcast or any other project that you're working on. Get in touch with Leo Rodriguez from Studio 69 Productions. You can find Studio 69 Productions on Instagram at Studio69NJ. Studio 69 Productions, where dreams are heard and born. Welcome back to the show, episode 604 of the podcast. I'm your host, RJ Carbone. You are listening to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. We also do MMA. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, and MMA on occasion. I appreciate you stopping by. If you're new to the podcast, be sure to listen to these episodes and give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Download these episodes. You can also watch the video edit of this podcast. It's up on YouTube and Spotify as well. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do that too. You know where to go for that in the description. I've got my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also if you want to go to BD4blog.com, where we occasionally write a blog on the Knicks, Yankees, MMA, we do that. So I appreciate everybody stopping by. We're going to wrap this thing up with our trivia here in episode 604. All right, so for this episode of the podcast, our trivia question of the day. Julius Randle now has 11 games of at least 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. This ranks second in team history to who? All right, Julius Randle now has 11 games of at least 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. This ranks second in team history to who? All right, so let me know the answer wherever you can reach me. If you get the answer correct, I'll give you a shout out in the next show. But as for this episode, that'll be that. That's it. We're wrapping up 604 here. Knicks take care of the Wizards. 4 games in a row they have won. And nice job storming Capital One Arena last night on January 6th. So with that said, let's wrap this up. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I really do appreciate every new subscriber that I've gotten the last couple of weeks. Awesome to see. Hope you guys are enjoying your weekend, and I hope you have a good week ahead of you. Episode 604 in the books, and I'll see you next time. Later. This episode was brought to you by Anchor.
Hey there! If you stayed the entire way through, we thank you immensely for it. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you come back for the next episode real soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, download these episodes, and share them with your friends as well. BD4 is a 5-star podcast simply because of you, and we'd like to keep it that way. Have a wonderful day. Go Yankees, and go Knicks!